In order to grow your business without always having to make cold calls and without always having to do marketing, without always having to do advertising, find people that serve, or businesses that serve the same people you want to sell to.
We definitely had to put a few processes in place with that. So when leveraging other companies in these partnerships, definitely I believe paying them commissions really does help them inspire them to pass that over to us. And it's also a win-win situation. And with the commissions, what I did find is if we would pay an ongoing commission to partners and they stopped referring people to us, maybe they ran out of clients to refer, then we were like paying them on and on and on, and we received absolutely no value.
I definitely encourage people, look for peer communities that you can become a part of, but make sure those peer communities are of like-minded businesses. And one of the things that set that community apart was the abundance mindset that everybody had, and a not legal but ethical handshake agreement that everybody had, that you would never steal clients from anybody else or its team members from anybody else in that community. Hi, and welcome to the Business Alchemy Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jonathan, and with me, my co-host, Beth. Today, we're going to be chatting with you a little bit about partnerships and the importance of leveraging good partners, especially those partners that serve the same audience that you serve, in order to help generate more business. And the concept's really simple. We'll let Beth help us dive into it in a moment, but it's identifying people and businesses mainly that serve the same audience that you serve, but provide a different level of service, and partnering with them to help them grow their business while they help you grow yours. So Beth, where should we go from there?
Good day, Jonathan. I think that's a really good start off. I remember when we had our business together that we really utilized partnerships partially to support us in the areas that were weak for us, but also, more importantly, just to get more spread, to have more people hear about us, to be able to touch more people. And so we used them in multiple different ways. One of them was definitely and primarily for marketing and to reach possible clients for us in the future. And I remember you came up with an idea that I thought, well, that's kind of different. I was a little nervous about it at first because it was IT. And when we started, IT and web design, they weren't that far apart in people's minds, even though the profession was really quite different. Do you remember some of your thoughts initially of why we should go after IT people?
Well, actually, it was because of that exact reason. We when we began Valor Circle and we're building out websites, at that time, let's see, that was around 2010, a whole lot of people kind of thought IT was mainly responsible for web stuff. And we looked at it very differently. We looked at it as web design was really should fall under the marketing team, not underneath the IT team. But yet a lot of people we found were coming to IT companies, their IT company at the time, and going, hey, I need a new website. Who should I talk to? And yet most of these web companies didn't, or most of these IT companies didn't do web design. And it was candidly kind of just taking advantage of a situation that came up. We had a number of IT companies that I knew from having been in that industry that would reach out and say, hey, I know you're doing web stuff. Do you want referrals? Because we don't do web stuff. And as you remember, we did find that there were a handful of IT companies that did web stuff, and they did great stuff technically, but they didn't tend to create websites that were very effective as far as marketing and conversion and that type of stuff. And so to me, it was just well, hang on, they're serving the same clients. And in many cases, the clients that we want are going to their IT company, generally for that company, a very trusted partner. So if we could get that IT company to be comfortable with us and recommend us as someone they talk to, then it takes, from a sales perspective, it took so much off of my plate that I could then basically walk in, and if I didn't shoot myself in the foot and our pricing was competitive, we were pretty much guaranteed we'd get that deal. And I'm oversimplifying it, but that was my thought process behind it. And I'd read a book or been at an event or something not too long prior to this, where the speaker had talked about, in order to grow your business without always having to make cold calls and without always having to do marketing, without always having to do advertising, find people that serve, or businesses that serve the same people you want to sell to. Not competitors, but in every industry, there are other people that are serving those businesses, in this case, that we wanted to sell websites to, and then figure out how to partner with them. And the best partners were ones that were tangentially related, meaning close enough that the clients would maybe be asking them for advice about us. And so to me, IT seemed perfect because there was what I called a disconnect with a lot of our customers, and that they would begin at the IT department when they wanted to look for a new website.
Which made a lot of sense, just because when the internet first came out, which was during, our 20s, not to give away too much on our age there,
I'll oil
it was
mine, but you don't have
definitely
to on yours. Yeah.
it was definitely related. I mean, they started out of the same field. The same people did them, just because there wasn't enough business when you first start out to really serve everybody. And so just as time went on, they really did go in two diverse directions, although in the same industry. I thought it was really funny when we had our first office, when one of the people we shared the office with, he had a different company, came over and asked us if we could help him fix his printer. That was a
Yes.
key that, oh, we do web, so we must do, hardware and software updates, and that technical aspect of IT as well. So it did seem like a very logical next step. What I did find, though, is that we had to continue to look for additional IT partners, because they didn't necessarily have enough business at that time for us, for our project, the project revenue that we did, meaning we'd do a project, it'd be done, we'd do another project, it'd be done. So we had to always keep that cash flow up. So we had to continue to have lots of projects coming
Right.
in. Now, once we went to the recurring revenue, I think it would have worked better, but we hadn't gotten that far in our thinking and the way we did business yet. So I do remember would get an IT partner, and for a while we had a lot of good, solid business coming out of them, recommendations towards us. And you're right, having someone else recommend us that a potential client already trusts really made the sale very easy for us. But then after a while, we'd kind of go through all of their clients, because they did have a lot of recurring revenue.
Correct.
And so they only had a certain size, a group of people, group of clients working with them. So that definitely meant, and it does mean for a lot of people, just getting a partner or two partners may or may not be enough, depending on what your sales kind of revenue flow is. Your sales model, that's the word I'm looking for. You may have to continue to look for additional partners, but they certainly can really up the game with the sales. And I found it vastly, vastly helpful.
Well, and the other thing that would prove to be helpful, you're right, we definitely needed more than one, because each IT company, we couldn't find one IT company that did enough to keep us busy.
Right.
Now, we had a competitor at the time, and they actually partnered with a large marketing agency. And that marketing agency brought them, I know, about 50 to 60% of their business, and it really helped them grow as well. So there were multiple people we could have looked at. I think one of the difficulties we had there is that so many of the marketing agencies that we knew in 2010 were also doing web design, or they wanted to do it in-house. And so it wasn't for us. We hadn't found that unicorn, so to speak, which a marketing agency would have been perfect at that time, but that didn't want to do that. So most marketing agencies kind of brought that in-house and were doing it. So while that would have been a very logical thing, in my mind at least, it didn't work out practically. And I want to encourage people that are thinking through this to again think about and brainstorm about who else is serving your audience. And we tried partnering with some other companies as well. And some of that worked okay. Some of it didn't. I know we partnered with, for example, with a company that did phone systems. And that brought us in some leads. Again, they ended up merging with some IT companies. So that ended up being a similar kind of soup pot, so to speak. But there were definitely others that we could talk to. In our case, we were serving small businesses. And so we could have easily talked to everybody from office equipment sales to even, people that were doing credit card processing, people. I mean, we didn't do this, but we even had a great client that did water. In other words, they were a bottled water company and they brought
Right.
water to companies. The While they served the same audience, that didn't work or wouldn't have worked as well for us because the clients weren't going to the water company and asking about web stuff. But
Exactly.
what would work there, and if we were doing it again, I would definitely probably do some more focus, is trying to figure out how to connect with some of the salespeople at those companies and offer them essentially an affiliate deal that, hey, if you're out and about and you notice that somebody's got a crummy website, you're already serving the people we want. Just mention that, hey, Valor Circle, which was the name of our company at the time, would be a great company to work with. That I think could have worked as well. Back then, we also didn't have some of the automations that we have available to us today. The marketing automation tools that we now have that we kind of just think is second nature. Back in 2010 and 2012 and 2014, as we were getting started, they were very hard to come by and very, very expensive. So we didn't have the ability to kind of automate some of what we can do today to even do that on a larger scale. But I believe virtually every business has peers in the industry, not necessarily in their industry, but again, that are serving that same client. Again, it could be, we see it happening all the time in home services. So if you're a roofing company, you're probably working with multiple people, including insurance agents and others, that are hearing about, somebody's got a roof issue or they got a roof problem. I know we worked with a number of damage restoration companies that
Hmm.
very heavily leaned on the insurance partners because when you got water in your basement or you had a problem like that, the first person you generally called was your insurance agent. And if they could get those insurance agents to give their name to their customer, that could generate a lot of business for them. So I think it's a fairly common thing, but I don't think we think about it necessarily as
Right.
business owners as much as we should and actively go, okay, who is serving this clientele and how can I add value to them? Because we also would refer the IT companies to our clients when we got occasional questions. But the other thing, I mean, very candidly, we paid them. I mean, there was no bones about it. It was like having a salesperson. I remember we had many conversations and they're like, oh, you don't need to pay us. And I'm like, but more people will ask you as an IT company about web stuff than will ask me as a web company about IT stuff. So it's going to be an unfair trade. And I'm happy to pay you a finder's fee. I mean, there's nothing nefarious about it. It was just, hey, if you refer somebody to us and they become a client, you get a commission, very much like an affiliate relationship. And that worked out really well because, one of the things, if you remember, we paid those out quarterly. And boy, when people got those quarterly checks, it was amazing how many more leads we got the next month because they've
Yeah.
just gotten a check for anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars. And all of a sudden we were top of mind because, hey, that was kind of like found money for them.
We definitely had to put a few processes in place with that. So when leveraging other companies in these partnerships, definitely I believe paying them commissions really does help them, inspire them to
Hmm.
pass that over to us. And it's also a win-win situation. I think that is a good thing. I think that's a definition of a partnership, that you have that. But with the commissions, what I did find is if we would pay an ongoing commission to partners and they stopped referring people to us, maybe they ran out of
Mm.
clients to refer, then we were like paying them on and on and on, and we received absolutely no value. So we actually had to change it so that there were some requirements, such as you had to refer someone to us within a quarter
Hmm.
in order to continue to get the commissions from past quarters. So,
Yeah.
do you remember what some of those other requirements were? That's the one that comes to mind right away.
That was really the big one we had because again, we did find that, sometimes we'd get a great partner and then they'd go, oh, cool. I referred a couple clients to you. I'm now getting money every quarter from you. I'm not doing anything. And we stopped getting
Right.
referrals from them. Not because of anything went wrong. We weren't top of mind anymore. And so, yeah, we
Hmm.
implemented it and said that we needed to have at least one referral every 90 days or you lost that recurring commission for that next quarter. And that really
Hmm.
worked well. And we explained it to everybody and nobody had a problem with it in advance. One of the things I encourage people if you're doing this is be very open about how you're going to do it. Don't try to, beat around the bush. Just make it simple and easy and documented. You were a big one for that. For me, I'm very good at overcomplicating things, but keep it simple. And that way, when comes time, everybody knows exactly what's there, and there's no miscommunication or anything like that. I remember we did have one of those miscommunications. One of our IT companies hired a new on-staff accountant, and somehow when that new accountant got brought on board, how we paid and how we did referrals didn't get communicated well. If I remember, it was just a simple, they didn't know we did it quarterly. And when, the first month went by and they didn't get a commission, I think they came in like when we got a quarterly check, they were like, what's going on? Where's our money? And I remember
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
hang on a minute, let's go back to, and the owners solved everything really quickly with us. But part of that was because we had a simple plan that wasn't overly complex. It didn't take 3 pages or 30 pages to explain it. It was really simple. You
It was
refer
a couple
somebody,
paragraphs.
yeah, you refer somebody, they become a client, we pay you, easy peasy, no, lemon squeezy, as they used to say.
I would like to see that, taken one step forward, or further, I should say, in that I think it needs to be reciprocal because that client you were talking about that I got quite a nasty phone call from,
Hmm.
they weren't sending us any, or actually, they weren't, let's see, they'd send referrals to us, we would pay them commission, but when we would send referrals to them, which we did, they did not pay us commission.
Correct.
And I was not happy about that whatsoever because I thought it was very unfair. I remember we sent them one or two that turned out to be very nice sized deals for them, and we didn't get anything from it. And then to receive a phone call from them, basically nasty, wanting to know where their check was. I definitely wasn't happy about that. So I do encourage people to make it, a mutual commission and make it a win-win for both of you, if at all possible.
Well, and I think that's where again that keeping it simple and being very clear on that communication is so important, because everybody, I mean, that IT company particularly, they appreciated those $1,000 and multi-$1,000 checks they got, and I get it. I mean, as a business owner, when you just get a check for a few $1,000s and you go, we didn't have to do anything, that's pure profit. That's a great check to get, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a great relationship with them. But yeah, that I remember the same thing. Due to some staffing changes and the way they went, we had referred them, and one of those deals was, to the best of my recollection, if not millions, at least hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue for them. And yeah, I remember it was a little sour on our part. And again, they didn't do anything wrong. We'd never agreed to get it, but it definitely sat a little sour that while we sent you that deal and you made a ton of money and you didn't even buy us lunch. So,
Right, right.
definitely encourage you as you're being a partner, always try to be fair to the people that you're working with, because it definitely soured. I remember that situation soured the relationship. And even when I asked, I said, well, that's great. We pay you guys a commission. And they're like, well, we never agreed to pay you. And I'm like, well, no, that's fair. You didn't. But,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there wasn't much goodwill at that point in time. And I know that definitely
No.
soured that relationship.
And I think that even if you don't have a formal partnership, if someone does send you a referral and you get a client from them, acknowledging them in some way,
Hmm.
send them an Amazon gift card, send them, don't bring them donuts. I remember we used to do that with a lot of our clients, even not even just referral partners, but we'd take them a dozen donuts here and there. And just those small things from our sales team to theirs, it's definitely a goodwill that builds quickly. And there's nothing better than walking in with a dozen donuts and seeing the smile on people's faces. I mean, we
Oh,
would
yeah.
endear ourselves so quickly that way. So I do really encourage people that even if you don't have a formal partnership, if someone sends you a referral and you get a client from that, remember them, send them some goodwill.
Yeah, I remember. I'm trying to remember the details, but you mentioned the donut drop, and I remember doing those donut drops. We would go over to Krispy Kreme and buy dozens of Krispy Kremes, and no, not for me to eat, although they were really good. But we would literally go around and drop them off at like, and if I remember right, I actually was doing that with potential partners, where we would actually put like a, hey, we want to partner with you, and
Right?
and it was great because if you ever have done sales, and I know it's a little different now after COVID than it was then, but if you walk into a business and you don't have anything of value and you're a salesperson, you're like a pariah. Nobody wants, I mean, you might as well be a leper walking in. Nobody wants to talk to you. But if you walk in with a box of donuts, everybody wants to know who you are. Everybody wants to, and it's amazing how I could walk in with a box of donuts that cost, I don't know, but back then it was a lot less than it costs now, I'm sure of that. But I could walk in with a box of donuts and I could get literally VPs and C-level executives to walk out and say hi to me cold
Mm-hmm.
because I'd brought in
Mm-hmm.
Krispy Kremes, as opposed to if I walked in with my business card, I would have got the strong arm and nope, no, nobody's interested. So yeah, really good advice there in general when it comes to just trying to build relationships or maintain relationships. Things like that go so far and make
They
such a
do.
tremendous difference.
I used to like to support local businesses, and we'd go over to Margie's Donut Den, and we'd get donuts
Yes.
from her to service our clients in a particular suburb of the city we lived in. So, yeah, donuts are the best. So I definitely encourage people to do that. Back to the partnerships,
Hmm.
I know that we talked a little bit how, when we first started, marketing companies were really doing a lot of the same things that we were at the time. So that didn't work out quite so well when we first started. But as time progressed, marketing agencies really started to diversify and
Yeah.
really focus in on very specific things that they would do. And one thing we didn't do were PPC or pay per click. And so we would seek out marketing partners in companies like that where we weren't crossing over and doing the same things. Or maybe we did similar, but not quite. I know later in the business, we did bring on or attempt to bring on some partners in the marketing fields that would help us out in those areas that we didn't support.
Hmm. Yeah, and again that also was helpful because in we kind of reversed it. In we had clients coming to us looking for services that we didn't necessarily have. And I remember at the time, particularly in pay-per-click, because we didn't do that, there were a lot of agencies again that were more full service, so they did everything. And I remember having a discussion in one of our leadership team meetings, like we can just let them go find somebody, but there's a very high likelihood they're going to find somebody that also does websites, that does
Yes.
PPC. And if we could then partner with people that we could trust, that would do a good job, that just did PPC and would refer the web stuff to us, it really created a really symbiotic relationship because one, it was helpful to the client because we gave them a referral to somebody we trust. But two, it helped protect our business because we didn't refer them to somebody who was going to potentially try to steal that business down the road. And the reality is, you and I both know things happen. And if you refer somebody to somebody that's potentially a competitor too, it's really hard for that client not to at some point consider them. But it was also
Hmm.
beneficial for those PPC companies because we could find some of those specialists that they just did PPC and they often had issues with different website companies for the same reason because those website companies also said they did pay PPC. And so partnering with them really was good across the board because again, they tended to be high trust relationships. I remember one client in particular, we got through one of those, was an environmental services company and they owned multiple different companies. We ended up working and building websites for three or four of the companies that they owned, which I think was all of them. And we rebuilt and rebranded those websites multiple times as they grew as a company. And so, that one relationship that we had, in fact, it may have been one of the few actually referrals we got from that SEO company, but that one relationship was incredibly valuable to us. But it also was valuable to the SEO company because we would continue to talk through the years and they always knew if there was anything that they needed done with the website or that they wanted changed, we would defer to them when it came to SEO stuff. So we wouldn't argue with them about, and they loved that about working with us as a partner. And so again, it created really a three-way win. The client won because they got two trusted partners. We won because we got new business. And in this case, the SEO company won because they so greatly minimized their hassles that they were able to do a better job for the client because they weren't spending most of their time fighting with the web developer about what the web developer thought was the right thing to do. So those relationships, when you can find them, really create that win-win-win scenario, which is just amazing.
I think it's very important to be cautious about one aspect of that. When you do bring on a partner and they can provide you with a lot of referrals, if they're providing over a certain percentage, it actually puts your business in potential danger because
Yes.
you're really putting too many eggs in one basket. So let's just say that I have a company that is buying, 50% or more of what I'm selling to resell it to someone else, one of their clients. Let's just put that out there. It reminds me of a company I actually know. And then that partner dissolves or changes their mind or hires somebody else, whatever the case may be, you just lost 50% of your business. And
Right.
that's absolutely devastating. So I do want to caution people to really make sure you diversify and you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Have multiple partners or ensure that that partner is only providing a certain percentage of what you're bringing in. It's so tempted when you get, the golden goose and you've got all of these wonderful, wonderful potential deals coming in and you turn them into clients, you're making money, you're busy. That's all wonderful. But if that goes on long term and you don't add other partners and have other sources, then you're really setting yourself up for devastation when or if that partner leaves. And unfortunately, I found that all partnerships end in business with its other companies that you're working with at some time or another. They can last for years,
Hmm.
but they do end at some point. So, what's your game plan if you're in that situation and the partnership ends?
Yeah, really important. Kind of a whole nother topic, but probably not one for a whole episode. Like you said, is just don't put all of your eggs in one basket. We've seen so many companies that we've seen over the years that had a great run. They worked with somebody, and even one of the competitors that I mentioned that was working very closely with a marketing agency. That marketing agency got acquired or became part of an acquisition, and as part of that acquisition, the other company that they when they merged, basically they got a web team with that, and all of a sudden, this competitor of ours, who was very successful, I mean, arguably a larger business than we had, all of a sudden they didn't crash. I mean, they've recovered and they've done all right. But I remember talking to the owner, and they had one hell of a time because they went from getting fed all of these deals to
Hmm.
almost overnight a call that's like, well, now that we have this new acquisition, we don't need you any longer, so you're no longer getting any of those deals from us. And so they'd relied so heavily, they'd partnered so closely, but they weren't the same entity, they weren't related, it was different ownership and everything else, that when that changed, that really hurt their business. And I can think of other companies like that. I remember years ago, you and I used to live up in Fremont, and we had there was a company up there that served Meyer, and they did, at the time, this was years ago, but they just put little advertisements on the shopping carts, and they had a great business. I remember they had a really nice, not huge, but a nice office up there, beautiful brick building. They were doing well by all reports. I did not know them personally, but everything that I saw indicated they were doing really well. They had a great business. And at some point in the process, Meyer decided they were no longer going to do that, and their business was done. It was over, just like that, because of something that probably had nothing to do with them. It was just a decision made by another company. And so, yeah, relying on that can be very beneficial in a short term period and can create some incredible revenues. It's also a very precarious position to be in, because if that hand that's that golden goose decides to change, all of a sudden you've got nothing.
Hmm. Well, and we even had that with a couple clients of ours. They weren't external partners, but they were actually clients that brought in a significant amount of
Yeah.
revenue for us. And when they left, it thankfully we were prepared for that to some extent. We knew at some point they would leave, just
But you're
because of
never
the
prepared for it to happen when it does.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Exactly. It definitely was a bit of, oh dear, what are we going to do now without this X amount of revenue coming in? And we thankfully did recover and everything was fine. But initially, that caused a lot of stress. So it doesn't matter what external resources you're using, whether it's for partnerships, whether it's clients, you need to be cautious of how much of your revenue is coming from that source.
Yes. Yeah.
One other type of external partnership that we really haven't talked about is the type of external resource where we are aligning ourselves with other businesses or organizations that are actually there to help us network with like-minded business
Mm,
entrepreneurs that then can provide us information. They can help train us in areas that maybe we're not as familiar with. They can give us resources or provide to us resources that make our jobs easier. And we did leverage several of those types of resources through not exactly partnerships, but they were definitely communities that gave us a tremendous amount of support, gave us wonderful connections, and can lead to other things.
yeah.
For instance, one of those communities actually was where I was looking for a sales engine. I was looking for a partner to have someone
Hmm.
provide us with sales in return for obviously some of that revenue and profit that we would then make from those sales. And it turned out that they wanted to buy, Valor Circle from me, and it worked out for a completely different reason. It worked out really, really well. So, what advice would you give in encouraging people to leverage those types of external resources?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of a pivot, but you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things I struggled with for the longest time, and I think a lot of business owners do, is competitors. We got to be careful about competitors because we can't share too much and blah blah blah. And I get that, and I'm not disagreeing. But some of the most beneficial communities that we ended up joining were communities of potential competitors, but they were competitors that had the same mindset we did. In other words, they weren't there to poach your business; they were there to grow. And one of those particular that we joined was Seven Figure Agency. If you've got an agency and you're looking to grow, I can't personally think of any better a group to become a part of. The community that Josh and Yesenia have created at Seven Figure Agency is I mean, just I can't even begin to compliment it highly enough. And the training that we got as an agency, the things that we learned, the way that impacted our business at the time, and as you said, even more valuable, the connections that we made with peers in the industry made a massive difference to our business in a very positive way. And what's so neat about it is even though that business is no more, I left 2 years ago, you sold the business a year ago. I'm still in touch with literally dozens and dozens of members that we made relationships with over 3 years there. And those relationships continue to pay dividends yet today, years later, even though we're no longer part of that community because we're no longer in the digital agency space. It's amazing the value that you can get from some of those communities that exist. And there are lots of them out there if you start looking, but definitely they need to be vetted. It's definitely worth the time though. I mean, I think that was probably one of the best investments that we made at Valor Circle was becoming part of that community at Seven Figure Agency and then obviously getting involved in it. It's kind of like joining the local chamber. We did really well with the local chambers and they added a lot of value to us. But I saw
Yes.
lots of people come and go in chambers and go, that never worked. Because I found
Mhm.
chambers only worked if you did. In other words, being a member of a chamber to put the plaque on the wall never brought a single dollar of revenue into you. But if
Right.
you were active and networked, attended events, guess what? People got to know you and that helped you grow your business. And really that
Mhm.
same thing held true at Seven Figure when we were part of that. We neither one of us are huge on business travel, but we would travel down to Miami 3 times a year for their events because we found out that while they offered a virtual experience, showing up in person created connections that were so much stronger and so much more impactful than those connections that we could create via Zoom when we were in there. And not that they can't be done, but it was like exponentially better. So yeah, I definitely encourage people look for peer communities that you can become a part of, but make sure those peer communities are of like-minded businesses. And one of the things that set that community apart was the abundance mindset that everybody had,
Yes.
and a not legal but ethical handshake agreement that everybody had that you would never steal clients from anybody else or its team members from anybody else in that community. And that openness allowed us to learn a lot of things. I mean, I remember sitting around some roundtable discussions, and you and I would come out of that and go, wow, I never thought of that. That was a perspective that I
Yes.
never had. And we would have never
Hmm.
been able to gain that value had we not been in that community and available and there to have those conversations in a trusted manner, because that also meant, we could never reach out and nab anybody else's client or anybody else's employee, and that was important too.
I just want to point out, because you didn't actually say this word, but seven figure agency is actually for digital marketing agencies,
Yes,
correct?
that is correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, if I didn't say that, my mistake. Yeah. So, but again,
Yeah.
if you have a digital marketing agency, I think it's an amazing community.
Hmm. It absolutely is. I really remember that long before seven figure agency that you did go to a lot of different, oh, you just said the word. Now my mind
Chambers.
just went blank. Chamber of Commerce events, yes. So there were several. Being in a medium-sized city as we were, there were a lot of suburbs, and those suburbs were really the ones that we went to and
Hmm.
signed up for their chambers of commerce, and there were multiple of them. And we definitely did better in some other than others because chambers are different. How they view the businesses in their communities are different. What their laws and taxes in those
Hmm.
communities, those are different. The participation of the members of those chambers of commerce are different. So definitely there were some that we liked better than others. Some you connected with more people in, some we got more business from others. But you also went to some groups called BNIs. Do you want to
Hmm.
explain what that is?
Yeah, so BNI was a networking group. BNI stands for Business Network International, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And much like the chambers, there were some amazing groups and there were some not so amazing groups, and it really depended a lot on the membership. And as we're talking about all this, I want to encourage people, if you try one or two and you don't have a great experience, don't give up on the concept just because you didn't find the right group. It's kind of like dating. Sometimes you've got to go out on a few dates before you find that person that you want to go out on a second date with. And that's really largely what you're doing as a business in these environments. We had some chambers, for example, that we had great relationships with. We had others that, not to be too picky, but I remember determining really quickly, if the city government ran the chamber, it wasn't worth joining because they were all about the city government. They weren't about growing businesses. If they had a good relationship, that was fantastic. But if it was actually run as part of a city department, it wasn't a beneficial chamber. Net always proved to be true. So you learn some of those things, kind of like, again, when you're dating, you learn there's, okay, if this is the case, then I'm not going to do that. BNIs were great because it's a very structured environment, a very good way to build and network with people. And again, the key there is finding the right BNI group. If you're in any reasonable size metro area, there are going to be multiple BNI groups available in your area. And you get to visit them. I encourage you to do that. You're not going to get any leads, by the way, when you visit. So don't go, oh, I'm going to visit, I'm going to get some leads. No, you're not. You're not going to get any leads because it is a tight knit group. But when you become a member of that group, not only do you become a member and do they help you with your business and help send you leads, but they also have lots of training that's available. So especially for new businesses, BNI can be a great thing because they can teach you a lot about networking and about what to do at these events and how to maximize them. And those were, again, the couple that we were involved in had worked really well for us, and been a good fit. But date them, in other words, visit them before you just dive in and go, oh, there's a BNI, I want to be part of it. Same with a chamber, same with any partner. Get to know them a little bit. You should be going out to lunch with your partners and talking to them. You should know who they are, and not just go, okay, yeah, there's somebody that I could send leads to and they could send leads to me. Make sure you're partnering with organizations that amplify your beliefs and that reflect your beliefs as well, because you don't want to be kind of that unequally yoked with a business or a group that has very different goals and objectives.
Hmm. I think that the moral of this story is really that leveraging external resources that put you in communities with real live people that you can network with, that you can get to know, that you can potentially find partners
Hmm.
in. I think that's huge in today's age. And it's really important for businesses to do, because if you work in a silo and you don't communicate with anybody outside of your business except potential clients, I think you're really missing out on opportunities to grow as a professional, to grow your company, to get more sales, and just to become more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like anything else. You've got to put that out there and understand that we don't have all the answers. I think something you and I have learned as we've built businesses, sometimes we feel it as we begin that, yeah, we think we've got all the answers. And then as we dig in, we find out, you know what, there were some other people that have walked through this and either have different perspectives or things they can share. And you don't even have to necessarily implement those. Sometimes just being aware of those different perspectives allows you to make better decisions in your business. So I think being involved in those communities, again, just brings a lot of value.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you have any other thoughts about potential partnership opportunities or places that people can go in order to find potential partners, like BNIs or chambers of commerce or external groups that bring knowledge? Do you have any last bits of advice for people of where they might seek?
I think more than where they might seek, it's how to act when you're in them. Don't join groups for the purpose of selling to the group. If you go to the chamber because you want to sell things to the chamber, that's why I went. I won't deny that. But I didn't attend the meetings to sell stuff. I wasn't always trying to sell them things. Don't treat everybody in that group like, you're a rabid dog and they've got a stake around their neck, because you're going to become a pariah faster than blink an eye. Go in and, much like in anything else, add value. When you start adding value to that community and that group, people will start flocking towards you and they're drawn towards you. And that's the way to maximize those. I can't tell you how many chambers, how many networking luncheons I've been to where, somebody shows up and you end up sitting at a table with them and all they want to do is book an appointment with you. All they want to do, and it's like, you don't know me from Adam, and all you can talk about is booking an appointment with me. Those people never stayed in any of the groups very long, because they always ended up washing out, because they would then, I could talk to them later and they go, oh, that was useless. Didn't get any business out of it. And it's because all they focused on was getting business, not about building relationships and adding value. And when you do that, they can be very valuable. I remember one year, one of the chambers that we were part of, we attributed nearly 80% of our business that one year to having been from that chamber through referrals and connections and all that we had made. And yeah, I spent a lot of time invested in that chamber and doing events and all that, but it paid off because it generated, even as a small company, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue for us based upon those efforts. And so that would be my last recommendation.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I think that those watching this will appreciate that as well. We certainly have had quite a bit of experience in this area, and you specifically, because you were leading the marketing and the sales aspects of Valorous Circle while you were there. And we did well from those partnerships. So I just want to encourage everybody out there to, again, leverage external resources, become part of communities, look for partnerships, people you can collaborate with. It's really going to help you in so many areas. It's going to bring innovation to your business. It's going to bring growth to your business. I guarantee it will bring personal growth to you as well. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us again today. I love it when we can have these conversations. And for our viewers, please subscribe if you like what you're hearing. Just hit that subscribe button. So thank you so much, and I wish everybody a great day.
Bye, everyone.